Well, hello everyone. This is Dr. Isabelle Amigues, your friendly rheumatologist, for another episode of the Unabridged MD podcast, where there is hope driven by science. Today, I have the most incredible guest, and I think she is exactly, she's exactly the word hope driven by science. You're gonna hear, okay? So Erica Bove is an MD. She's a double board certified OBGYN and reproductive endocrinologist. She's a physician at the University of Vermont, and she's also a certified life coach for the Life Coach School, which is a really awesome school, by the way. She's also the founder of Love and Science, Thriving Through Infertility. She has a keen interest in marrying an evidence-based approach with intuitive knowing in the context of a trusting relationship. She empowers professional women to build their families with confidence and self-compassion. And so, Erica, thank you so much for being on the show. So that's,
Thank you, Dr. Isabelle. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I usually don't read the bio in front because I'm thinking, well, I would rather you tell me, and tell the auditors who you are. The reason I wanted to read yours is that literally I could write the same thing in rheumatology. And I consider hope is very much same thing than love. I just don't put love on my website, but I think that the meaning of life for me is love. And I've always thought as a kid that it was very cheesy. And then you realize that it is actually what it is, right? Like it is love. And then you talk about intuition, which I absolutely love. And there's very few doctors that are okay to share the fact that they are intuitive. And so thank you so much for just allowing me to read your bio. But now let's talk about you. Like, who are you? Why did you start doing this? And I think just listening to who you are, like people who are going to listen are going to feel empowered and going to feel loved. Actually, really, that's what it is.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to share. So I'm originally from the state of Vermont, so small town, USA. I do come from a family of people in medicine. So I think growing up, I had the ability to see just the amount of healing, not just in individuals, but in communities that especially my father and my grandfather were able to bring about. And even this is crazy. And like, this is part of why I feel so compelled to do this work. Like my paternal grandfather died before I was born, but because people talked about him so much, not just in my community, but in my state, I felt like he was a living presence among us. And I will tell you, and like come to the intuition part of this, fast forward, like I do embryo transfers. I feel his spirit in the room. I'm like, thanks, Papa. Like, I appreciate it. Like, I'm going into a hard case. I ask him to help me. I have his instruments in my home that he used like 60 years ago. And he was on the forefront. I went to my sister's wedding and he was telling people, like, people there were telling me how he got them pregnant with Clomid before it was cool. Like, so like, it's all of this. And like, the Catholic Church, like he would say, like, I know we're not supposed to do your tubal ligation, but like, I'll do one side, the other person can do the other side and we're good. Like, he was really sort of avant-garde in thinking about health and wellness and women's care. And so I say this because I actually went to medical school to become a psychiatrist. I was always interested in like the human spirit, what motivates us, love, like all these things. And once I got to medical school and started doing my rotations, what really grabbed me was the women's health. Like I can't explain it, but it was just like, this is what I need to do. So I decided to switch gears, did an OBGYN residency, really loved the infertility stuff so much. And so I decided to pursue that. But then once I got into clinical practice, I realized that women's needs were completely underserved within the structure that we had. And so, all these very important decisions about like, what are your next steps? These are your options, but who are you? Like, what are your values? What are your priorities? How many kids do you want? Like, what's important to you? Clinical medicine did not hold the space for that in my experience. And so that's why I launched Love and Science, which is really a safe space. Most of my clients are women physicians actually who are, getting standard of care from a fertility perspective, but it's not enough to really address their deeper needs, their deeper healing to allow them to really get to the other side of parenthood, whole, loved, intact.
It's just so beautiful what you said. I love the idea that there is some sort of spiritual presence to help with the embryo transfer. And yeah, it's so cool. And when you're mentioning that that women are not, their needs are not met, it's actually really interesting. And I'll share my own story. I tried IVF, it didn't work at all. And I think one of the reasons it didn't work, and then I have twins for Clomid, which happened after, but like, the insurance is like, you need to try Clomid first, and and it worked. And we're like, okay,
Yeah.
great. But yeah, during the time I did the IVF, I remember thinking like, I don't even feel like this is my body anymore. This is like, I'm there, like we all have those buzzer, and it just like, it's not mine. And I feel even more guilty to need this when, having a kid should be so easy. And so I really feel the pain, and also the hope. And I wish I had someone like you at the time, because right, I went through this alone, no support. I didn't even know you could get support, really. It's a ton of money. But
Yes.
basically, like, it didn't work. And then, once I was in a better mindset, we just did Clomid. And I'm not even sure it's Clomid that helped. I mean, probably, right? But just bang, got pregnant. But I had to be in my mind at a place where, it was okay. Like, it's fine if I wasn't becoming a mom, it was okay. And it doesn't mean that my worth is completely gone. And I'm sure you go into those things. Yeah, it's really interesting. So when can you tell me more about this, right? Because I'm feeling as the future mom that I would become, as the woman also that I was, I think I was a fellow at the time. Yeah, there's so much into becoming a mom, like trying to become a mom and pregnant.
Oh, yes. I mean, I think part of it, like you mentioned, is we're just so out of touch with our bodies. And that's, I think medical training, especially, we work, work, work. We don't pee when we should. We ignore our basic needs. And so when we actually have a longing, a desire, that intuitive nudge that tells us what to do, we're so used to blocking those signals that we can't even listen. And so that's part of what I help my clients do, is really get back in their bodies. Part of it is coming home to yourself, right? Pee when you need to, eat when you need to, speak your mind when you need to, all those things that we're so disconnected from. Balancing trust and advocacy. Like I said, the reproductive health system is, people are often a number, and it's like, how do you say, no, this is who I am, I have these questions. Trust and advocacy are not two different things. We can do both at the same time, but how do you help people find their voice? But so many of us throughout the course of medical training have lost who we are, right? And I will say that very much for myself. I lost myself. I, couldn't cry for many years. I had a divorce. Once I was getting divorced, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know what I want to order on a menu in a restaurant. Like, this is a tragic situation. And so that's what I really help people do, is feel their feelings, embrace their feelings, let their feelings go. And also, like you said on one of your podcasts recently, is really accept the possibility that this might not happen for them. That's where you actually have to start to really have that understanding that, like, all will be well. I will have a rich life, whether I have a child or not. I do believe my highest good is to become a mother, but if not that, something even better. Right. And so it's really that detachment from the outcome that is so hard to bottle up, and it takes work. It's like the emotional work. But I think that's what you did for yourself, right? You said, like, I had to realize that, like, I had to change my mindset. I had to let go of this, and then boom, it happened. Like, that's why when people decide to adopt, they find themselves pregnant. So it's releasing those blockages to allow people's treatment to work, really.
Yeah, I really love how you say this. It's like we learn how to care for everyone but us. Yes. And it's almost like, as you were saying this, I was like, wow, this is actually really fascinating, because it's almost as if our body was like, hey, you need to first take care of you before you can become a mom. Because
Yes.
if you go from taking care of everyone else, especially as physician, to taking care of kids, then when do you take care of me? Your body, right? Like,
Correct.
when do you take care of me, your body, your mind, all of this, right? Really fascinating. And it's really interesting. I was sharing this, the disease, like how physicians do not necessarily learn how to learn to the language of our conditions. And I guess infertility is considered a condition, right? And it's really interesting. Like, I don't think at the time I was too young. I didn't listen, and I was like, no, I need to do this, so I'm going to do that, and I need to, take care of my patients and take care of the research and all of this. And I think it's really interesting that, maybe infertility made me realize that success is not necessarily what I decide success is, right? So it is. Yeah, I guess we all need someone like you to talk and to get us through this.
I think you're right. And I think it's also, as physicians, we're taught that if you just work harder, then you can bring about whatever outcome you want to bring about. And with infertility, it's actually counterintuitive. It's counterproductive. The harder you work sometimes, the more attached we are to the outcome and the less well it works. So it's like, how do you slow down? How do you allow? How do you make room for that discomfort? Because it's not just like a checklist that you can check off. It's being open to many different possibilities. It's, open. It's so complex, but it doesn't follow that regular formula that we're taught with every other aspect of achievement.
Yeah, I really love this. So I wonder, I really do like this podcast, and very often in the podcast, I'm like, okay, well, do you have a history of hope? Because it's really hope driven by science. Tell us a history of. Sure, you have many.
Goodness. Oh, that is such a beautiful question. Okay. So this is like the first thing that came to mind. So when I was in high school, I was a competitive runner and, did really well in the state of Vermont. But then I got to college and really realized that somewhere along the line, I had really developed this awful eating disorder. Right. And I was very fortunate because I went to a college, Notre Dame, that had like kind of a spiritual bent to it. And there was a spiritually based support group on Wednesday nights called A Life Uncommon, where all living these uncommon lives, right? And I went to the first meeting and there were like 90 people there. And I knew I was in need of healing. I did not know how I was going to get there, but I was like, I'm going to have to leave college. After I worked so hard to get into this wonderful school, like worked so hard, achieving and running, which was always my goal. But now I'm sort of faced with the darker side of this coin, which is like unable to, like 90% of my thoughts are about food and body and like all these things. And so I did the work. I went to the support group meetings. I found myself a therapist. I went to a dietitian. I like journaled all the things. Like every single day I did something. I basically, designed my own outpatient program, right? Even though it wasn't official. I would imagine like you did it in the context of your health challenges too. Very, sort of analogous, but I got better. I got better and my mind, was able to see my body as beautiful. All that brain space that was taken up by food and body, it just melted away. And I started to figure out who I was, what I enjoyed. I decided to pursue a degree in great books. Like who thought I would do that? Philosophy, poetry, art, literature, such a full, rich education that I don't think I could have accessed if I had just been so consumed by like truly trying to stay small, this more expansive version of myself. And I just knew that was such a deep healing. And then I became a support group leader and then, used my voice to create change and all those things. But that was really my first version of hope, right? Because I think that sometimes when we think the world is ending, we access this part of ourselves that really challenges us to figure out who we are and also like how we need to connect with others to make that happen. That's why I have a group in Love and Science, because we don't heal in isolation, we heal in community. So that is one of my many, many stories. I could tell you about my divorce, which ultimately is a story of hope as well. But and I also think that I will say that right now, the way I'm able to practice medicine is also a story of hope because I have this incredible balance of being a mother myself, being truly involved in the lives of my children, having a practice, a clinical practice that supports that, and then also being able to do this coaching, which if you had asked me 5 years ago, like, I would say, Dr. Isabel, like, I love you. You're such an optimist, but like, that is impossible. That does not exist. But by tuning into my intuition, saying, I think I need a Vermont license. I don't know why, but I think I need a Vermont license. Okay. All right. I'll put in the time. I'll do the work, get the Vermont license. Things sort of are not going well in the New York practice. I'm going to call those Vermont people and see, like, all these things that lined up and came together. It's a story of listening to the intuition, which is now affording me this incredibly beautiful life that I could not have even designed. I'm so grateful every day. So those are a couple of my stories, but
Okay.
I think that, and I'm not like, people talk about hope all the time. I do not believe in sort of like a blind, God's going to take care of everything, and we don't, like I said, we're co-creators. And so this is authentic hope. I'm very clear with my patients and my clients, like, how can we sink ourselves into something real so that we can have evidence for the hope?
Yeah.
And obviously there's the unseen, like we trust in that too, but it's authentic hope and we are the co-creators.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And such a beautiful, beautiful stories. Before we kind of wrap up this episode, where can we find you?
Yes. So my website is my most comprehensive place, loveandsciencefertility.com. I have social links under the same name, Love and Science Fertility. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, my podcast. I am passionate about this, and we are so on the same wavelength. Like, it just brings me so much joy to talk and to know that what you're doing for your rheumatological. Actually, I just listened to your podcast and I just sent my mother an episode. I'm like, Mom, you've got to listen to this. She knows what's up. So I'm just so grateful that you're doing what you're doing in the world, because it's that deep healing that I think we're not taught how to do purely in medical school and residency and fellowship.
Totally. Well, I thank you so much for being on the show, ladies and gentlemen. And if you think that you would benefit, and I'm sure everyone could benefit from at least listening to your podcast, and it's Love and Science podcast too, as the
Love
name?
and Science Fertility. Yep, Love and Science Fertility.
Okay, wonderful. Listen, I think hope is the most powerful driver with love of healing. And so it's, I'm with you, Dr. Bove, Erica. So yeah, thank you so much. Everyone, tune in for next one. If you think that this is helpful, and I'm sure it would have helped me, I'll tell you, and it's wonderful always to think this exists. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And then everyone, share this with someone you think would benefit from that. And you never know where those are going to go, because it might be that they listen to Dr. Bove and they learn more about Dr. Bove, and then maybe Dr. Bove gets them to be pregnant. And when you are trying to get pregnant, sometimes it's hard to let go, and having someone to help will help. It's rare. But until then, I'll see you all next week. And thank you again, Dr. Bove, for coming on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amigues. It was such a pleasure. And I know we'll collaborate even more in the future.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.